Welcome back to Igniting Young Minds, Crafting Creative Thinkers. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a teacher development program to help teachers learn how to develop critical thinking skills in the primary classroom. So, as we talked about previously, we've been moving into logical reasoning, and we have three parts to that: interpretation, inference, and pure logic, basically. So, last week we talked about interpretation, and today we are moving on from interpretation to inference. So, inference is building your thinking through evidence. It's gathering evidence to make your conclusions stronger. So last week we talked about interpretation and how interpretation was all about what meaning we bring to our observations and our experiences just through life. What is the interpretation that our mind puts on a certain situation or experience based on yourself? So now, when we move to inference, we're adding on to interpretation a new block of more evidence. That information added to information can make a stronger conclusion. So, why is this important in the primary classroom? Well, in the people, small people and big people alike, are making interpretations all the time. And they're making inferences all the time. So when we are wanting to make stronger and stronger arguments and develop our thinking to the point where we can actually lay out our thinking, we will gather evidence towards our conclusions. And so, little children, as we talked about interpretation, they're mostly interpreting things according to their emotions, how they feel, maybe some past experiences that they've had. But when you are adding inference, it's actual knowledge about our experience and somewhat about how we feel about certain things or how we know that other people feel about certain things, or how at least we think they feel, because sometimes we infer how people feel and it's not actually how they feel. So it's all about asking more questions. When we infer something, we are observing a situation or a circumstance, and then we're making an interpretation about it. And then when we want to infer, we're asking more questions to add more information to what we already knew or interpreted. So inference is the building block that adds new information to old information to build that stronger argument or come to a better conclusion. So how is this relevant to the primary classroom? As teachers, we're making inferences about our students all the time. So one student in particular comes to school, doesn't have their homework done. Then we automatically infer he doesn't care. He didn't say that he didn't care. His body language maybe looks like he doesn't care. Maybe you have a little bit of evidence from past experience and then you think that he doesn't care. But there are more questions that you could ask to gather more information about why this homework was not completed. Maybe he didn't have the materials he needed. Maybe he didn't have enough time. So basically, we need to think and ask more questions about why that child's homework is not done so that we can come to the correct conclusion and make sure that we're not unduly judging a situation in an incorrect way. So, as teachers, it is so important to continue to ask questions of our own judgments. And then, as teachers, we have so much curriculum to get through. We have all this information that we want to pass on to the kids, and we want to say, oh, this is what it is, this is what it is, this is what it is. And we want our students to remember and memorize it. But if we slow down the process and we ask our students the questions like we talked about in observation and interpretation, we talked about asking the kids more questions, allowing them time to process their information. And so as we're asking them the questions and they're coming up with these conclusions, we need to say, why do you think that? Where did your conclusion come from? So if a student in the class is saying, I think all dogs are black. Why do you think all dogs are black? Oh, because I have a dog and he's black, and my friend has a dog and it's black, and I saw some dogs that are on the street and they're all black. So I think that all dogs are black. You know, as a teacher, that there are other colors of dogs. So how can you add information to the information the students have to help them to understand that there are other dogs that are other colors? And so that's where we can help students construct knowledge. When we're helping the students think through, and if we understand how the students are thinking and what they're thinking, then we know which information needs to be added so that we can build up their knowledge base so that they themselves can come to stronger and greater conclusions. So that's how it is for teachers, that we have to remember to ask so many questions and to really help the students build it up. What about for the students? Understanding what inference is in a definition way is not so important for young learners. But modeling how to build arguments and how to present information is one of the key ways that we can develop inference and logical thinking in our primary learners, because our learners are imitating everything that we do. And so if we're not willing to ask more questions and to build on our knowledge base, then for sure our students won't either. If we're modeling behavior that says, I know everything and this is the full information that I'm giving you, then students are going to feel like when they get the full information, then that's also how they need to present it. And so many times, if we feel like I have all the information about this topic and here I'm going to give it to you without allowing for questioning and for more information to be added to what we already know, we are not showing open-mindedness, and we are not allowing for greater and greater depths of critical thinking. Another thing that children love to do is guess. And you can notice when children are guessing by the way they're trying to think up the answer. And they often also want to say what they think you want them to say. So we need to help our children to think based on evidence. Guessing has little or no evidence. It's just like blurting out something. But inference is a conclusion based on some evidence. And that's where we want to get our young learners to really continue to ask them why they think the way they do. Good inference doesn't require perfect information. It just requires relevant information. Information that is means something to the particular environment, situation, or circumstance that you're dealing with. And because students have limited information, we need to be giving more and more information to them, which we all know that's what we do as teachers. We're giving out information. But as we're giving it out and we're allowing students to observe and to ask their questions and to process information and give out what they know, we need to be asking them to tell us why they think those things. Like, where did the information that they're coming up with, where did it come from? So that we can find the gaps in their learning and hopefully fill in those gaps or find ways to fill it in. So the strength of inference, so as we talked about in the logical reasoning section, all logic is inference, but not all inference is logic. Some inferences are weak and some are stronger. And logic is inference that is carefully rested on evidence. So as we talked about, interpretation is also inference, and it's the weakest form of inference. And then we have inference under the big category of inference, which you add a little bit of information, a little bit more information and more evidence to come to your conclusions. And then logic, we will talk about that next week, is even stronger yet. So if we want to build this in our classroom, we need to be helping our students to get more information when they are coming to conclusions. It's all about adding information, constructing knowledge so that they have these huge castles of knowledge that have ability to be built onto as well. Like, there's no limit to how big their castle can grow. And that goes all the way back to open-mindedness again, like how we're so open-minded to allow all of this information in. If we don't allow new information in, we can't learn to make stronger and stronger inference conclusions. So the classroom strategy that you can use right away is to incorporate this kind of questioning. What makes you think that? Whatever they say, what makes you think that? You could even say, where's your evidence? Depending on the level of your learner, where's the evidence that shows you that what you're saying is true? What did you notice that led you to that conclusion? What did you observe? What did you feel? What do you know about how other people feel? What do you know about this situation or circumstance that led you to this conclusion? And then we can move it to, could there be another explanation? Or could you come up with a different conclusion? So as we're asking students to think about what led them in this direction, we want to also lead them in a different direction so that they can be continuing to think through how arguments are made and how information builds on each other. We strengthen inference by making thinking visible. We show our students the process from observing to conclusion. We give them the building blocks. So if you find that your students are doing a lot of guessing, they are not following through different evidence to get to conclusions, you can help them by building each step along the way. I think this because I started here. I looked at this situation and then I interpreted it in this way, and then I added this piece of evidence, and this piece of evidence to come to this conclusion. So if we are breaking down arguments in this kind of way, then we are helping our students to see how to build strong thinking. So this week, as you go into your lessons, I want you to also, on top of adding the strategies to build it with your students, I want you to be reflective in terms of like how you are modeling this kind of thinking. What inferences do you make quickly as a teacher that you could ask more questions about and get more information to come to different conclusions? Which conclusions are you making that could use more evidence? How are you helping your students to strengthen their inference without abandoning their inferences? What I mean is, we can easily see that some conclusion is wrong. How are we taking our students back to their original thinking and helping them process the information so that they can find out that their conclusion is wrong without telling them that is wrong? When a student tells us, makes a conclusion and says something that we know is wrong, are we automatically saying, no, that's wrong? Does anybody know the right answer? Or are we leading them back to the beginning to say, can you think through that again and tell me, and help them through the evidence if that's what they need? Whatever support you need to use through the thinking, you will be using it to build up so that they can come to that conclusion. So without telling them, but leading them through. That's what's really going to help them to, first of all, not get defensive and or their feelings hurt or hurt their self-esteem, but it's going to help them really be like, oh, this is how you do it. And then the fact that the first one was wrong, nobody's even thinking about it because we've already gone through it again and we've come to the right conclusion or a better conclusion. So inference is where thinking begins to take shape. Inference is where thinking begins to take shape. I hope that you can take this message about inference and really put in the strategies and reflect on your teaching practice, and join me again next week where we will talk about logic. I'm so happy and excited that you guys are here, that you're learning about different ways to develop critical thinking. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions that you would like, put it in the chat and I will answer as soon as I see it. Or you can even DM me, give me a personal message, and I would love to continue the conversation. So I'll look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Bye.